Charles Rambo. Charles Rambo. Due to yielded time, you'll have up to 8 minutes today.
Thank you and good morning. Forgive me, good afternoon to the mayor as well as the city council members. My name is Charles Rambo. I'm a retired from the Fulton County Sheriff's Office with over 30 years of public safety service to include law enforcement, intelligence analysts, corrections, which also led to me helping lead the Fulton County Jail into 95% compliance ratings with its most recent consent decree order. Today, I understand the weight of what you're trying to deal with the city jail, but it cannot ignore the overcrowding of the jail with residents that come from your districts. This is the peril of this also is to the peril of countywide taxpaying citizens. As cited by the United States Department of Justice, the Fulton County Board of Commissioners, as well as your former corrections chief, now Fulton County Sheriff, the Fulton County Jail is in a state of crisis. I urge you today to reconsider ending the city's contract for housing Fulton County inmates that, again, come from the various districts that you represent. My reasons are not based upon political policy, but legitimate law and order for the people, not just in Atlanta, but countywide citizens whose public safety are also at stake. Number one, the majority of pretrial defendants housed in the Fulton County Jail charged with state, felony, and misdemeanors, again, that come from your districts. If diversion is your goal, then please, let's make it real in a joint pilot project prioritizing those Atlanta-based inmates with mental health and addiction struggles towards restorative justice. But abandoning detention altogether really will violate the essential duty and contradict the essential service of policing. It will only push the crisis back into unforeseeable consequences back into your districts. Number two, while I respect and defend the First Amendment rights of signs that declare incarceration is inhumane, with all respect to activists here today, that was the similar chant that was held when protesters stood in front of the Fulton County Government Center 5 years ago in opposition to building a medical wing at the Fulton County Jail. What resulted, as the great former city council member and county commissioner Lee Moore said of that vote that failed, it will come back to haunt you. Years later, imagine LaShawn Thompson's death could have been prevented in a state of an art medical unit in the space that had been constructed if it had not been voted down.
Decision to pay the family of an inmate whose body was covered by bed bugs has raised questions about government action that happened back in 2020.
Fulton County had $21 million that could have been used to expand medical housing at the jail, but commissioners chose not to go forward. Fox 5's Morris Diggs looks at why the commissioners did not approve that project.
A settlement in the matter of LaShawn Thompson in the amount of $4 million.
Fulton lawmakers Wednesday authorized a $4 million check to go to survivors in the jail bedbug infestation death. Mr. Thompson, who suffered a mental incapacity, had been kept with other medical inmates in an overcrowded and unclean ward. A retired jail supervisor says Thompson might not have been in that situation had action been taken 3 years ago to spend $21 million to expand and segregate the health facilities at the county jail.
Could have helped those persons who were HIV, those persons who were mentally ill. They could have had at least a new, cleaner facility.
Why didn't it happen? The police killing of George Floyd spawned protests. It included a defund the police movement. The outcry spilled over into the 2020 meeting via Zoom of the Fulton Commission, which had the jail project on the agenda for a vote. Opponents spoke against it.
You should be ashamed of yourselves to suggest that sending millions of dollars to our prisons right now is some sort of progress when we are watching people protest in the streets, black people, white people, brown people.
How big a role did the pressure campaign play on the decision? Well, there was only one commissioner who advocated for the medical expansion.
That's a little scary to me for us to not take this action. If those additional beds are used to relieve some of the overcrowding, I think that would be a very good thing for us to have.
That medical wing that was never built would have housed 120 inmates. Not a cure-all for all the problems here at the Fulton Jail, but that retired lieutenant says it certainly would have helped. From Northwest Atlanta, I'm Morris Diggs, Fox 5 News.
Next, if jails don't solve problems, is the free speech that will influence your position on today, your vote on today's resolution, then please instruct the Atlanta Police Department to stop bringing inmates to the Fulton County Jail. It, again, will violate as well as contradict your legitimate interest in trying to provide law and order services that need correctional facilities to house people towards incarceration as well as adjudication. That's why rehabilitation cannot exist without humane Eighth Amendment conditions where people languish in jails, returning to your districts a better criminal than a productive citizen. But most critical, as it applies to every municipality, and I'm a witness to this, our jurisdiction's got to do a better case of bringing to the criminal justice system cases that can pass a constitutional muster of getting past Sixth Amendment demands by inmates to have their fair day and fair opportunity towards trials. Now, I respect the fact that you don't want your facility torn up, as we hear in federal reports, as well as the media of the Fulton County, like the Fulton County Jail. While internal order and discipline is not the scope of county or city officials, that's the sole responsibility of the elected sheriff. But remember, 3 out of 4 voters rejected a $1.7 billion mega jail, which leaves you with an aligned mandate. Hold the sheriff accountable in his constitutional duty in leased spaces consistent with landmark cases like Pecunia versus Martinez, which give him, not the courts or legislators, constitutional discretion to manage conditions within internal order and discipline. This must happen now, not only in the county jail, but also in your leased spaces. My comment today is not about political grandstanding or power moves that have haunted the relationship between the county as well as the city as it pertains to the city jail. Trust me, I go back to the inflated cost that the city wanted to charge the county for the facility when we offered to try to purchase it when we were under another consent decree. Essentially, just bringing this to a close, at the end of the day, I urge you all to be partners in constitutional reform, more or less because, and I'm going to say it because I don't hear any civil organizations, I don't hear any religious communities, I don't hear anybody coming up here to speak towards the plight of black youth that are housed there at that jail. We are not getting ready to give up on people who deserve a second chance and sending them down the road when they obviously might be exonerated for the crimes that they have been charged for. So at the end of the day, this is where I'll end. And I don't like quoting scripture in front of politics. But according to Daniel's 3rd chapter and the 3rd verse, you as well as Fulton County are in the same condition, almost the same as the Hebrew boys who stood there watching their community leaders on bended knee as opposed to standing up for what is legitimate towards their rehabilitation. Please do not let this type of Babylonian curse fall upon the city of Atlanta, the jewel of the South, because we're abdicating and failing to special interests that otherwise are not taking consideration to those who need some type of rehabilitation. And it begins at the Fulton County Jail. Do not please take this lease away from the county. I say this as a person who has worked at the county jail and watched how you all have bound over cases over to us that crowded out the jail and left us having to manage it. Please act more responsible. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm totally fine with voting on this today. So, Mr. Chair, yo.
Mr. Chair, this did not follow the committee process. Again, it is about human lives. This is not about a parcel.
Let me let Councilmember Bond in. Councilmember Bond, then we'll come back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Councilmember Lewis. I respect his right to call his paper up because that's our procedure. The rights of the author of a piece of legislation, if it's been held twice, they have the right to call it up. However, I think what has been played out here in this discussion is that this matter does need more discussion. And to me, it goes beyond the legislation itself. It goes to whether and what type of relationship we have in managing our governmental responsibilities to our joint citizens of Atlanta, and in this specific instance, Fulton County. The city of Atlanta is 3/5 of Fulton County. 90% of Atlanta rests in Fulton County. The problems of Fulton County, 90% of them are the problems of the city of Atlanta. On any given day, because of our police department and our policing, anywhere from 65 to potentially 95 of the persons that are held in Fulton County's custody are there a result of the work of the Atlanta Police Department. There was a time less than 30 years ago where Mayor Maynard Jackson, Fulton County Chairman Michael Lomax had worked in agreement on our criminal justice system and on our jails that worked for decades. But it was the crisis, the housing crisis, that caused the city of Atlanta to break that agreement. If we wanted to help the sheriff immediately, we could have our correction officers watch the inmates that are in our jail, that are in Fulton County custody, and that would give him 45 deputies immediately to help to make Fulton County safe. So that's just one part of this convoluted arrangement that we have with Fulton County. And it does bear more discussion. It does bear more scrutiny. And I think that we ought to do it because it is people's lives hanging in the balance. And nobody likes to talk about jails. No, Fulton County certainly doesn't want to talk about their jail. They would build a new one because they need to build a new one. But we need to have those type of conversations again with our counterparts at Fulton County to do things, and I don't want to sound cliche, but the Atlanta way. Because prior to the early 2000s, we had a good arrangement with them on our facilities, on our courts, and on our policing. And also want to point out, you don't have a jail for the police. You actually have the jail is a outgrowth of the court system. So there's also a larger discussion that needs to be had with the court system between Atlanta and Fulton County, because technically, most people don't realize this, but our municipal court is actually a special court of dispensation, meaning it is the only municipal court that has state court powers. They used to handle first appearance hearings on behalf of Fulton County, which kept people out of jail, which kept people from being filtered into Wright Street. So there is a big conversation that needs to be had, and the jail is just the jail in this contract is just one piece of it.
Councilor Boone has been waiting. Councilor Boone.
Mr. President, I'd like to call the previous question.
There's a motion by Councilor Boone to call the previous question on the motion to refer, seconded by Councilmember Hillis. We'll move directly to a vote. There's no discussion. Again, it takes 2/3 to call the previous question, and aye is to call the previous question and close debate.